Hello and welcome to Weekending. We have an action-packed episode. Author Siddharth Sanghvi talks about his new book called Loss. Actor Mithila Palkar tells us why she entered 2021 on a high note. We meet the founder and some of the contributors of Instagram page Terribly Tiny Tales and a to-do list for parents of toddlers. Lockdown babies. Now, they are not used to seeing people. How does one change that? Let's find out. Nisha Diwan is a sociologist and a mother of a 3.5-year-old and a 2-year-old. She shares her children's pandemic journey.
My son was only one when the lockdown began. So there hasn't been a fundamental change in his life. For my daughter, she was going to school, she was going to activities, she was going to play area, she had a friend circle, she was going to the park, and all of a sudden that changed. For my 2-year-old, there hasn't actually been a loss. It's just that his life has continued as normal. For my 3.5-year-old, there has been a shift in her life, and she says this. She says, she calls COVID-19 the bukaru, and verbalizes that I want the bukaru to go away.
A 2-year-old, a 3-year-old who is only meeting 2 or 3 adults, doesn't have too much engagement socially. When social skills are learned, and they are learnable, depending of course on the temperament of the child and how much opportunity they get to learn it. So one would imagine that when the world opens up and the child does have the opportunity to slowly, in little bite-sized pieces, meet other people, they're going to take some time over it, but social skills are learned, and so they will learn. And children who are a little older, who have then been in lockdown, say 3 or 4 or 5, might have a period of regression where they've sort of forgotten, lost those skills. But development isn't linear. Development is forward and backward. We learn stuff, we lose it.
Priyanka is a mother of 2 children. Her younger one was 1.5 years old when the pandemic hit. She gives real-life solutions on how to make a toddler get used to people.
I have 2 boys, 4.5 and 2.5. And when the lockdown started, I was more worried for the older one, since his life was, packed before that. School, classes, sports, park, everything. The younger one was just 1.5, when they started. So it was not that big a concern because parents were home, brother is home, so he was fine. It was only after months, like probably 6 months, when we started meeting people, we realized how socially awkward my younger one was. So we started, first of all, made a bubble, started interacting with a few friends who had kids same age. And secondly, we started, like at nighttime stories, we started talking about his friends, his peers.
Experts say that a child seeks a safe environment and happy parents, but that becomes tedious if COVID fatigue sets in.
Me personally, back in March, I was a hyperactive Pinterest mom. I was thinking up 4 activities a day for the children. I was a lot more intentional. Now, 10 months later, with COVID fatigue setting in, I'm not showing up in the way that I did 9 or 10 months ago. And this is further complicated by the fact that we ourselves are experiencing COVID fatigue. We're getting tired. We're working from home. And I think it's the solution in many ways is being intentional and really consciously trying to show up as our best selves.
The family, the parents are the people who the kid really wants to interact with. And if even 15 minutes in a day of exclusive time for the child but regularly. So every day, even 10 to 15 minutes could make a huge difference to both your relationship with the child and also the child's sense of security as well as stimulation.
Increased screen time is something that most children have happily embraced as parents get some quiet time.
Screens are very, very difficult. Our daughter was 2.5 when the lockdown started, and she'd pretty much been screen-free before that. And now with Zoom school and the fact that, she needs something to engage her at home, she has a lot more screens in her life. Very hard to translate learning through play online. And also it's unnatural to have a 3.5-year-old sitting in front of a screen and focusing. It's an expectation that we have of our children that many of us probably couldn't do for extended periods of time. And I think as parents, we just need to be okay with that.
There's something about under threes, not more than an hour, etc. I don't know. I'm sure all of this is out of the window.
More involved with them and genuinely involved with them. So one of the things I would always say, tell parents, and I do this with myself as well, even though my daughters are 9 and 12, but I've been doing with them, is to keep my phones away. So one of the things that is very popular with children of this age group of around the 2.5, 3 years is we get them to, you can get them involved in activities by creating colors, So if you don't have rings at home, you can have, colors, different colors of ribbons and keep them at one space in your living room or whichever the most spacious room you have, and put a yellow Lego piece in the yellow ring. So the whole idea is to get them to be more engaged with colors. So there is a fair amount of mental as well as physical engagement going on. But the most important thing is to be involved with them.
Parents of toddlers must know that this is the most manageable age in the pandemic. Even slightly older kids can come with complications.
Children over 5, their needs are more complex. It's a phase where they are learning a lot more. They are using their bodies, whether it's like swinging or hanging upside down or kicking a ball and running. These are things that have not been possible over lockdown, and that group has suffered a lot of frustration. It's like they are ready and juiced up with no place for that juice to go. So that age group, their struggle, I think, is far more visible.
So remember, toddlers are resilient and all they want is a caring environment and some real-life bed stories to remind them about the art of socializing. So parents of toddlers, do get creative. In a year where death and sickness has been all around us, author Siddharth Sanghvi's book Loss makes for a cathartic read. Siddharth, thank you so much for joining us. Your book talks about your parents' and dog's illness and passing away. Taking cue from your own journey, what advice do you have for people? How can they cope with death?
Well, I'm nobody to give any kind of advice, Ambika. All I can do is share some of the things that have worked for me. One of them is that, there is no such thing as healing. I think that's a slightly American idea. I think that what happens is that you learn to become as big as your wound, and then you allow it, to kind of ride with you. So it's no longer the thing that decimates you. It's just the thing that begins to keep you company. And that takes time. So when people, say things like, oh, you haven't moved on, or, I can't believe it's 3 years and you haven't, found somebody else, or, you're still moping about this. You take all the time that you need to process the grief. That's the most important thing.
What was the toughest aspect of it all for you during the illness of your father, mother, or your dog?
What was toughest for me was the recognition that I just wasn't going to have the kind of wonderful conversations that I did with my mother, the kind of silence that I kept with my father and with my dog, Bruschetta, who loved me in spite of both.
Was writing about death cathartic, and how did you start writing about the subject?
So Ambika, it started when I had written an essay on losing my dad, and I had shared it with Amitabh Bachchan, who occasionally reads some of my work. He messaged me to say, can I publish this on my blog? And I agreed, a little shy, a little reluctant, not knowing where this would go. And when he did publish it on his blog, the incredible response we had, from all corners of India, made me realize one thing, that in India we put an emphasis on the rituals of death, but not the experience and the things that follow, not the emotional quotient that comes after that. And so that's where it became the starting point. And Amit Uncle published that essay on his blog, and I received incredible support and responses from people, in small towns, in villages, in big cities across India. It made me see that, we're all struggling with loss. We just haven't been able to give it the language. And one of the privileges of being a writer is to serve that role, is to be able to put down, what it is that you can do with the artillery that you're provided, which in my case is language.
How have you been dealing with the pandemic?
I haven't left my house. I've just been here in a very rural part of Goa. So it's been bearable, but that's because of the extraordinary privilege that I work as a writer, so I can work out of home. I don't necessarily have to go out. So I really salute, our healthcare workers, our workers of, who provide essential services. I really bow down before them a million times for the services that they have been providing us.
What's your advice to all the authors out there?
Read, 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 and always keep a gap between the time that you write and the place when you begin to edit. That's really important, and you'll find that you are often your very own best editor.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ambika, for the gift of your reading time.
So what does a good year amidst a pandemic seem like? We ask actor Mithila Palkar. Mithila, thank you so much for joining us. You had a great 2020 and entered 2021 on a very high note, winning lots of awards. Take us through the list.
Well, I ended my 2020 with a Filmfare, the first Filmfare for OTT that they announced, the first of its kind. Dhruv Sehgal, my co-actor of Little Things, and I won for the show, best actor and actor female and male. And the one that was followed by that was Time's Power Women 2020. So I think I ended the year on a good note.
How did you cope with the pandemic?
How did I cope with the pandemic? Actually, initially, to be very honest, it was quite hectic, I think, in the sense of like, it was very overwhelming because just to get used to the fact that you have to sit at home and you're not going to be able to get out, you're not going to be able to work. That for me was like the biggest downer. But I think as I very quickly got used to the fact that, okay, this is what it is. This is what the entire world is doing right now. So it's okay. I don't need to, panic much about it. I think what was precious for me was that I got to spend a lot of time with my grandparents.
You're gifted with a beautiful mane. How do you maintain it?
Oh God, I'm going to sound like one nanny giving nuskas, but I'm telling you, you have to oil your hair. It's something that I have learned the hard way, but oil your hair, shampoo your hair, condition your hair, deep condition your hair. It is a long process. And then, of course, use a leave-in conditioner. So it's a lot of products. It's a long process. It's a lot of effort, but I think the results are priceless.
What's your skincare routine?
Just drink a lot of water for everything. I think drinking a lot of water solves a lot of problems in life in general.
Once the pandemic is over, where are you going to travel?
I will visit my sister in LA.
Where do you invest?
Now that you've asked me, I must mention that my father plays a very, very important role in that sense because there is very little of that I understand, and because he comes from an accounts background, it really helps that he sorts me out. So the most obvious FDs and mutual funds, so of course that's there. And recently he's introduced me to the stock market. So I still am not very well versed with it, but I am. He's teaching me.
What was your workout?
So I do body weight training. So I have a trainer. Every morning I used to go and train with him, and that kind of just like training with him kind of just changed it for me, because I do lots of different regular push-ups, squats, etc. तो करते ही है. But like animal movements, headstands, handstands, all of that he teaches. It's a little bit of capoeira also he teaches. It's a Brazilian martial art form. So he kind of mixes and matches so that every day is not the same, like it's not monotonous and it's exciting. So every day is a different kind of a workout.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are watching Weekending, and now we are in conversation with the team from the Instagram page Terribly Tiny Tales. We have with us Anuj Gosalia, the founder, as well as Meghna Rao and Anushri Joshi, who are contributors to this Instagram page. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. Anuj, I begin with you. What inspired you to start this Instagram account? What was the goal, and what did you do right that it became so popular that you have close to 2 million followers?
What inspired me was really the name itself. It's called Terribly Tiny Tales. I figured that at some point, younger folks, well, you could debate fortunately or not, but a lot of people weren't reading as much as they would when they were younger. And it's also contributed by phones and TikToks and Instagram and these sort of depleting attention spans. I was a victim to that too. And so TTT was a response to that.
Now, your page is a lot about emotions. Do you think Indians have started opening up their hearts and sharing what's really in it? I would like all three of you to answer that. Meghna, we begin with you.
I think as a young girl, I always found a lot of comfort in reading. I could find a lot of comfort in writing as well after a certain point of time. And yeah, I think slowly this particular form of art is finally reaching out to people.
I think creative writing is inherently about the personal, the political and the sentimental. So if a writer expresses something and the readers are not receptive to it, then that content wouldn't work.
All right. Anuj, what sort of content makes the cut and who judges it?
What we really care about are three things. If I had to give you a succinct answer, we care about relatability, craft, and surprise. I think these three things, if you look at any short, pithy, powerful story, you'll see that either the story is very relatable. The moment you read it, you're like, hey, that's so me or someone I know of, or it's got a twist in the end. It's got a surprise element, like what a joke would do, or a twist in the end would do. And then the last is craft. At TTT, we still really care about, writing a story well. So it doesn't matter if it's, if it's relatable, but we do expect writers to care about the craft because, that's what makes a story live longer. You could have a nice meme, but that goes away. But a well-crafted story, it stays with you.
Of course.
And so these are the three things we really care about.
Anuj, which has been the most popular post for TTT, and Megha and Anushri, which has been the most popular and well-read post for both of you as contributors? Anuj.
So we've got lots of blockbusters, but one that I want to quickly share with all the viewers right now is this tiny story, right? It says, I opened my chat to find 20 images. Tell me quick, read the text. Cities apart, she still couldn't shop without me.
For me, I've always loved TTT's 140s because they're so short and powerful, especially the ones they do on Mother's Day and, other red letter days.
As a contributor, I think going by the numbers, I would say it was this open letter that I wrote when Irfan Khan died. So that post, I think, worked on the level of relatability and it connected with, as you said, the emotive part of it. As a reader, for me, there are so many 140s that worked really well.
What's your advice, Anushri and Megha and Anuj, to all the contributors and digital content creators out there? How can they generate more income?
So the number one principle is consistency. I believe it beats talent. I think some very average creators, just by virtue of being consistent, grow big. And I think the money should always factor in later.
Meghna, Anushri, if you could quickly give us one-line tips for everybody watching.
Okay, I think it's a balance between the commercial and the well-crafted, which works for pages like TTT and a lot of creators that I think I follow right now. So yeah, it's the balance.
Yeah, like Anuj said, consistency, hard work, and just showing up at your desk every day to write, whether you can or not, just do it.
Consistency it is. Anuj, last question. What's the average age of contributors, and are there more men than women? Or are there more women than men?
I think the average age, contributing age at TTT is always tending on the younger side. We would be in the, I don't know the exact age range, but we would be in the 19 to 22 age range. That should be the average, like say maybe 20-year-old is the average age at TTT contributions. And yeah, we always had more women write with TTT, which I find is incredible. It just, it just adds so much meaning to the stories we tell. It's just shaped the community the way it has. Yeah, so.
Wonderful. Thank you all of you for taking out the time. If you want to become an Instagram blockbuster, consistency is the key. To everybody watching, thank you so much. Have an incredible week. Goodbye.